All right. So good afternoon. This is basically welcome to another episode of the Yamanote in Tech and Society podcast. My name is Chris, and today's podcast is going to be talking a little bit more about the idea of entrepreneurship, being able to rise in building your own brand, utilizing a lot of the new tech tools and educational services that are out there, and also to maybe have you, the viewer, share your voice and what you're looking to get done or what you're looking to achieve, and just to basically just talk and get some of your an outlet to just vent or rant or whatever you looking to get done. It's no big deal. So today my podcast is going to be fairly similar to what we normally do, which is pretty much looking for well, I mean, like, I kind of have a few things. Let me write it down. So basically, one of them is going to be talking about Teachable, and Teachable is an app, web-based app that allows you as the user to teach literally anything to your audience. Teachable is pretty much available on their website, teachable.com, where you can create work content and videos and upload them on an account that allows your user to, can purchase the content, and you can upload and keep track of the different information, communicate with your audience, and also be able to provide some sort of avenue of like for building a revenue or building money that you're looking for your application. Or if you're looking to go ahead and do things like that, you can check out teachable.com. I also suppose it's going to focus more on the access of building my own Plex server. I think I spoke about that last week too. And Plex servers are pretty much it's another service that allows you to download and stream your content, video, photos, music, from your personal computer as a server that you can use on your PS4 or Xbox, smartphone, literally any device that allows you, that Plex has a device for. I'm actually going ahead and putting together one right now. Well, I have the items. I'm going to go ahead and be putting it together probably in another week or two. And stay tuned. I'm going to be putting together some sort of like, I don't know, Instagram page or Twitter feed to keep people, in the know of what, how it goes on. And maybe even start having some of my videos on YouTube episodes be available via the Plex server. One of the benefits of using a Plex server is that it allows you to share your content with your fans or your followers without actually having to upload them on a public, cloud or some sort of public domain, such as like Facebook, or uploading them all up on Instagram or YouTube. You can use this one, which is you get lifetime free. I think it's about $100 last I heard, and you can use that as a way to, maybe you only have about 200 fans or 300 fans that you might want to share information with, or maybe you have a family that you want to share photos with, but you don't want to use them online. You can use this service here, and you're completely capable of designing the entire thing with using the Plex server's development technology that they have. Like, they have some APIs that allows you to build a website around the content that you're having. You can add titles and descriptions and pagers and pictures and stuff like that. And I really like that because, one, it helps me as a developer who is always looking for a way to, build my skill set, and maybe almost like extend my skill set to do something as unique as, running your own like business where you are sharing information, about building your own like private media server without having to worry about, the people, getting it, having information get in the wrong hands. So I'm going to basically talk more about that later. And I think the other thing I'm going to talk about is the book. I just finished reading the book called Permanent Record with I'm sorry, Edward Snowden. He basically, Edward Snowden was a whistleblower who used to work for the NSA or CIA as a contractor for several different companies before he shared some information about how the American government was spying on American people. And here in America, a lot of people have their different ideas on what they think he should or shouldn't have done. And but he does go over some good points on how you should protect your stuff anyway, even if it's not just for the American government, just by protecting yourself from just anybody, and I was probably going to speak about that book as well. I might even have, I think I have another book too I also want to speak about. We'll see how much time I have to get fired, but for right now we're going to just take a small break, and then I'll come back in a moment. Are you tired of going ahead and sending all of your mail to one particular provider and then having to search through it through your family's, Gmail or iCloud? Well, you should sign up for Evernote. Evernote is a productivity application that allows you to type and add audio and store pictures in a notebook-like fashion, and then also allows you to be able to share those files across several different applications. You can also go ahead and you can collaborate with other people by sharing a notebook. Try Evernote.com. Evernote also provides a source where you can forward all your mail to your particular notebook and then be able to search and sort through all of your email or specific email that you're interested in without having to worry about sorting through all the email that comes through email. If you have any receipts or photos or any other particular documents, you can download or purchase Evernote's scanner that basically allows you to scan in your documents right into Evernote and uploads it straight to your notebook. Try out Evernote.com. Evernote.com. Hey, welcome back. You noticed that I had a little sample ad there, right? Well, I've actually downloaded a tutorial about learning how to build a podcast on Skillshare. Skillshare is a website that allows you to download tutorials from, masters or gurus from several different backgrounds. One background I'm actually looking for, one actual tutorial I'm looking up is how to create a podcast with John. The guy's name is very difficult to pronounce. I'm going to say it very slowly, so that way you can probably get what his name is. Let me say. Okay, so his name is John Lagos. Oh, man, this guy's name. Yeah. Okay. So his name is John Lago Marcino. Yeah. And he kind of goes over, basically the bare bones steps that you need to create a podcast between planning, recording, and even launching to success. He goes over all different types of microphones and different platforms that you can use to launch your your podcast, or even using a website, using audio editing software such as Logic, GarageBand, or even Anchor. He basically thought. I think he really pitches Anchor though, because I think he works for Anchor. If you really want to get a chance to know what he's about, here's a clip so you can kind of like pay attention to what he's saying.
A podcast, very generally, is just a way to deliver audio files automatically to listeners. What's in that audio file and what's in that feed doesn't really matter. So as a listener to a podcast, you would use a podcast app to subscribe to a certain podcast, and when there's a new episode, it gets downloaded. As the creator, you upload an audio file for every one of your episodes, and that episode gets distributed to your subscribers. Podcasts obviously then are a little bit different from traditional radio. Podcasts are on demand. Back in 2005, when Apple added podcasts to the iTunes app, Steve Jobs said it's like TiVo for the radio, both of which sound quaint and outdated now. Podcasts run the gamut in terms of what they're about and what format there are. There are shows like The Joe Rogan Experience, Death, Sex, and Money, Welcome to Night Vale, Planet Money, or Another Round. Shows hosted by all kinds.
So you can basically see that, you can get a lot out of that. That was just from the introduction of the Skillshare video. And I've been using it right now to kind of pay attention to keeping a slot for an ad, just in case if you did have an ad and you wanted to put an ad in your video, in your podcast. I'm not really interested in putting a ad in it just yet, but the ad could be for anything. You can talk about different stuff that people are looking to. Other podcasts you can talk about. You can leave little bits and stuff like that in there for maybe talking directly to your audience after you've already recorded it. So I really do. I'm really becoming more and more and more excited about podcasting. I mean, for one thing about it is that anybody who has access to a smartphone or even a computer can pretty much download this podcast. The podcast is not really that long. It's easy to actually listen to, and you don't necessarily have to have that much bandwidth. So audio files are a lot smaller than video. I am thinking about maybe having running a simultaneous video podcast, like vlog with this as well. As I get more and more adept with using podcasting software, and maybe you want to have, I don't know, maybe have a guest on and interview them somewhat, or if I wanted to interview them separately and then have this podcast. So right now, I mean, it's kind of is exciting. I mean, each week I try to put together like some notes on what I want to talk about and how I want to go about it, and I think that the methods for developing content is changing, with every day, and I think that everybody should actually have one. If you are, if you're in school right now and you're looking to build some sort of like social branding or social presence, a podcast is a great way to get people to learn a little bit more about what you're about without actually having to, know too much about your content right away. And if you are consistent with your podcast each week, you can easily get into someone's, work mode or morning routine and get opportunity to, have them listen to every day. There are a few podcasts that I grew up with, and I'll talk about them in a minute after this break. All right. So basically, my podcasts I listen to. All right. So let me just give you a little background about podcasting. So about maybe in 2010, 2011, I started listening to more podcasts than I normally did. I kind of watched. My first podcast I was listening to was like JapanesePod101.com, and it was a website that it was a podcast that allowed people who were interested in learning Japanese to every day, or at least three. I think it was 3 or 4 times a week, be able to listen to a audio conversation that would start out with the conversation in Japanese and then go to conversation that was in Japanese, and then I think it was Japanese, and then it was slow it down, and then I think the third section was the same conversation but in English. And then in the comments or the description would have the translation. So that way, if you were interested in learning Japanese on a regular basis, you could kind of listen to these things. And I thought it was really great. I actually listened to that a lot. I think later on, all of their first like early video or early episodes were only available in their account, their special premium services that they only provided to people who purchased a yearly subscription to their system, which that's a great model for building a business and stuff like that. They actually grew and have like ChinesePod101.com, GermanPod101.com. They have all different languages now. Moving forward, I think that there was the other podcast I listened to was English Teaching in Japan, Jason in Japan, HerroFlomJapan. Okay, yeah. So pretty much in the in the beginning, like early on, I kind of had this obsession to like go to Japan, and I had a hard time trying to get a job there. It was being I just got out of school and I was applying to different companies and trying to find out more about like working in Japan. And at the time, Japan was the only thing you could do was teach. I mean, I wasn't really going. I really wasn't going to school for teaching. I was always interested in web design development, and getting jobs in that was very very difficult because of the fact that you kind of needed to I guess like not just speak Japanese, but you also had to work for a very specific group of people, in order to get into those things. And I was actually still going to school at the time, so but getting the job, and I mean not getting the job, getting the podcast, I was able to listen to people who were like, they were all different types of people. Also, like there was one guy, he worked in Yokosuka. I think that was it was Jason in Japan, or Jane. I forget what it was called. It was something with J. I think it was Jason in Japan, or John in Japan, or something like that. Where he was on a Navy base, and he had a family. He was just like doing podcasting from his basement, and he had great content, very good content. I mean, all his content was literally about living in Japan. Some of the things that he always felt was kind of weird about being in Japan, being an American. His ideas of like he wanted to come back to America with his family. He had a lot of things going on, and he had these really great like sound bites, which literally at the time they were like the sound bites of the trains. And I think that's kind of like why I got Yamanote, because Yamanote is like basically one of the famous trains in Japan. Not really famous. It's more like it's one of the most popular trains in Tokyo, because it's a local public train, meaning that it's owned by the government, and it goes around in a circle. I think I'll maybe post a link somewhere. And it was one. If you're interested in traveling to Japan, and you land in Tokyo, you're probably gonna go on at least once. And it had Wi-Fi. I mean, like it was whether you were able to kind of like really do a lot of things on it. And I was always interested in traveling to Japan, and he had like some nice sound drops that really was unique and creative, and I can't believe how much time I waited before I actually started doing my own podcast. But yeah, it was great. Now there's another guy called Gaijin in Japan, or where it was another guy. His name was Chaz, and he worked for Jet, and he worked for other like language schools, and he was just talking about how he wanted to, help people learn about like teaching English in Japan, and how he had other ideas and things he wanted to get done. I remember one time his mom passed away, um, and like I think he like one show he like missed a show or two, and he came back and he said like he celebrated his mom's life, and he was really excited about you know all the things that he was happy about because he was in Japan when his mom passed away. And I just listening to these podcasts is really, I got attached to these people because I felt like they were living their life. They were living their life, and they were sharing with us. And you can't possibly understand how close you actually get. You can get to a person unless you listen to these podcasts, because they're literally talking about themselves, and I really liked it. I actually listen to them a lot because they kind of help me to stay motivated for speaking Japanese. I mean, like now, I speak Japanese, pretty well, and I can read and write, and I still, study. I'm trying to, do some other projects now, like maybe even start up Japanese podcasts. But I feel like I wouldn't have thought about any of this unless I would have had like these podcasts in the past. They're not around too much anymore. One podcast that actually comes back right now is called HerroFlomJapan, and that guy I have to give so much props to. Oh man, I gotta see if I can find his. I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna try to see if I can find information, because that guy, I gotta talk about that guy. All right, so I think I probably like missed out on a little bit of the conversation I was basically talking about, but I'm gonna go ahead and just all I did was just like put the actual podcast clip in. So I'm gonna just put the podcast clip in real quick, and then I'll continue from there.
Because really, that's the longest I can put it off without. Hey y'all, it's Friday night, and I gotta put the show together. I was gonna do it last night, but I put it off. I always do the shows on Thursday night because really that's the longest I can put it off without canceling the show, because usually on Friday nights I have to leave Tokyo and go back up to Koga, where my wife and kids live, and it takes 2 hours. So usually I just leave from work. I didn't get the show out last night. I went out to eat with some friends. There's a woman I know from New Zealand. Just we're internet friends, and her boyfriend is studying in Osaka, which is the other big city in Japan that everybody knows. It's not close to Tokyo. It's 3 hours away by Shinkansen, bullet train. Well, she was here visiting him, and they came up to Tokyo. So last night, was their last night in Tokyo. So I took him out to a restaurant, and we had a good time.
And you can go ahead. You can see that he goes into like a really good like conversation. I don't know why I was excited about listening to him. I had no idea who he was, but I remember using the early version of iTunes on my early version of my Power Map, my Apple PowerBook, and you do Google, like in this, not you wouldn't Google. I think I did a search query in the iTunes podcast to get I just typed like Japan and like certain people would come up, and his was pretty popular. And back then, iTunes, podcast was pretty new. I mean, 2005 was pretty new. I mean, that was pre iPhone. That was pre iPhone, and you guys, you have to know how old that was. And listening to people on the phone, uh, like talk about their lives and their ideas from another country was just amazing. I really wanted to listen to it because I didn't really do too much emailing or comment because I think that Facebook was around. No, it was MySpace. Yeah, MySpace was around, but if you wanted to kind of contact these people, you would have to do an email. Yeah, so it wasn't necessarily like a like something you can do. Uh, like the either communication wasn't really there, so you would have this in email, wait for a response. Now we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have YouTube, and we have ways of like sending all the information around. So it's going to be pretty noisy in the next few years, with the podcast. But back then, it was such a sweet time. I mean, like thinking about it right then, like back in 2005, I didn't go. I didn't head to Japan for another 4 years. So like I was getting all my deep content from consumption from like podcasts like this, and it was great. I mean, to this day I can listen to it now because I can see that that podcast was a way to really get a chance to learn a little bit more about a person, about a place where people live, and it really connects people. And I think that is the number one thing why I want to do these podcasts is because I want to be able to like have a connection with my audience. I want to be able to express my passion about something without having to, I don't want to, I'm not looking for it to be, like NPR tier, I mean, like it would be nice to get, there one day, but I think that just being able to have some of these things set out where I can let other people listen to it and probably, have something to offer or to add, it would be great. Um, I think that we don't spend too much time trying to curate our history or our thoughts, and we can do that with podcast. Podcast is a great tool for that. I just think that I one thing I want to make sure I do is I want to make sure that the things that I talk about, that I can find a way to translate that into other languages, because I have friends in other parts of the world that speak different languages and don't necessarily yeah, that wasn't actually meant to happen, but it happened. Sorry about that. Yeah, so basically I wanted to go ahead and, find a way to, connect with these people. And one thing I liked about Rich Provovich was that he spoke a lot about the idea of living in Japan as like a Japanese, like, as a ex expat. That's like the very first, he was the first person to actually introduce that word expat. Salaryman. He worked for like an American company, but the company was very Japanese. I think he has two kids. I'm not too sure. I think it's two kids. One kid was like at the time was like 5 or 6 years old. At this time now, I think he was like 17 now. He maybe another episode. I can link the description where he does like this 10 years later thing where he like goes to his son's 17 years old and, and was just like, oh wow, like I remember when he took you fishing, and I remember when he took you to the store and you would complain about things. And and like this was all to me, like it was really hard to get many people hooked into podcasting, but podcasting is legit. Like there's really a great way of like an outlet of expressing yourself and sharing your ideas and getting the word out about different things that are available. I mean, at the time, I think that I, I struggled a lot trying to get I struggled a lot trying to get like the Japanese like trying to get like a job in Japan. Like it was, and that's like probably actually for another show. But like I understand a lot of it now, now that I'm able to, not only speak, but I can travel there without having to like have a job, So back then it was like the only way for me to see myself in Japan. But I think I'm gonna end it right there. I think that the show should be no longer than 30 minutes. I know I was gonna go ahead and talk a little bit more about um some other things, but I probably will leave that off. If you have any questions or any comments, you can please leave a comment at just email me at ksamuel.chris@gmail.com. For now, I will be putting out an official email, but I also have a Twitter, which is basically Yamanote Tech. So if you just basically on Twitter, just goes at Yamanote Tech, you'll be able to see and drop me a line there, any questions or comments. I also have an Instagram at the Yamanote Sen. Right now, I don't have like a official face. This is my picture there. I'm hoping to, slowly start to use this branding as a way to express and share all my content without having to utilize like a direct, my content. I have reasons for that, but I think it's much better to do it in this like production minded way. And thank you for listening if you got to this far, and see you next time.
You realize to your astonishment, there is no way at all of having your mind anywhere else but in the present moment. Because even when you think about the past or the future, you're doing it now, aren't you? And that results in a very curious transformation of consciousness. You feel that the present moment is flowing along and carrying you with it all the time. Just like the flow of the Tao. The flow of the Tao is what we would call the flow of the present. See? And you're with it. There's no way of being anywhere else. The Jungyong, the book called The Unwobbling Pivot, says the Tao is that from which one cannot deviate. That from which one can deviate is not the Tao. Or to put it into the form of a Zen story, the master Joshu said to Nansen, "What is the Tao?" Nansen replied, "Your everyday mind is the Tao." Joshu asked, "How do you get into accord?" Nansen replied, "When you try to accord, you deviate."